here.
Recording in progress.
All right. All right. Ah. Hello, dear friends on Zoom. Hmm. I see several of the survivors of the Brighton Bush retreat. Nice to see you. Mostly I'll be looking over your heads at the live beings here, but I'll try to remember to check in. Oh, people. Hello, earthlings. Thank you for masking up. I am not, because it just doesn't work to do this. Plus, I am now 4 times vaccinated and once time COVID. I tested positive 3 weeks ago tomorrow. And I took the antivirals. I talked to my doctor and he said, yes, at your age with your comorbid issues, you qualify. So I took them, and within 4 days I was COVID negative. I was not feeling great though, a lot of fatigue. But then that faded over days, and then I've been testing negative. I've tested myself, because I was teaching at Brighton Bush. I tested myself regularly, so I am apparently, according to the tests, COVID-free. So I still won't be in great close proximity with you. So, hello to my friends on Facebook and YouTube and Zoom. We have 40 people on Zoom, 41. Never know on Facebook and YouTube, and people time shift later, so I am glad to be here with you. Incidentally, for those of you sitting over here, aside from here, that's the worst place acoustically in the room, because the speaker is right up there, and it doesn't really reach that corner, and so you get lots of garble. This is an acoustically very complicated room. If you have trouble hearing, we have devices for the hearing impaired, and when I'm working in classes and I'm hearing people from in here and out here, I always wear one of the hearing impaired devices, because it gets the sound from the board, and it's really clean, versus here in the room there's all these strange complicated vibrations. So, anybody here for the first time? 1, 2, good. Are you safe back there in the corner? Good. Well, you're most welcome. I'm glad you're here. So, let's do something really special on the earth. Let's sit and basically do nothing. Let's sit and do the something which is being alive now in the present moment. We already are that. But mostly we stay lost in fantasies and hopes and fears and emotions. Meditation is really fundamentally the practice of not doing. Though there are strategies and lots of different, quote, meditations we can do, but they all point in the direction of ultimately not doing, of being free from having to do. So please let us remember the refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Refuge in the Buddha. Being awake is the refuge in the Buddha. Being mindful. And what would that mean in this moment? It might mean simply be aware of the fact of your body, the actual sensations in your buttocks and back and arms. The Buddha was a real human being, a really ordinary human being, just like us, who was transformed by his spiritual practice and who became a pretty darn bright light in the world. For these teachings to have survived down through 2,600 years. The refuge in the Dharma is refuge in the teachings, superficially that, but more fundamentally it's, I take refuge in that which I discover when I pay attention. For instance, the reality of the changing breath. The reality of the mood at the moment. And I take refuge in the Sangha, in the community of practice. And more fundamentally, in the lineage of beings who have awakened, which is our true family. And then I like to include one more rather large leap, which is to recognize our beingness in the community of all life. And so it is that we sit comfortably upright. And we might conduct awareness, bring awareness, awaken awareness in the sensations of breathing. And we can notice very easily that each in-breath has a beginning. The beginning leads to a rising to fullness. The rising to fullness leads to a decline. And the decline leads to vanishing. In addition to breathing in and breathing out, we humans commonly experience some activities of mind. The mind can be restless, agitated. It can be sleepy and dull. It can be colored by desire, wanting something. The present moment can be experienced as quite inadequate. Or it can be experienced as wanting something not, of disliking something, being aversive to something. Or it can be colored by doubt. This is a very unusual thing we're doing. And we can fall into not being sure. There can also be moods, often moods. Maybe most of the time some mood or another. We are not at war with the wandering mind. There's plenty of war in the world. We don't need to feed it. We can make very gentle, conscious, intentional choices, however. When awareness illuminates the mind busy wandering, come home to the breath, come home to the body, into the reality of this moment with in-breathing and out-breathing. there is a certain natural history to the mind. If we wanted to study the lemurs in Madagascar, we would go there. We would set up an observation post that would disturb them as little as possible. And then we would sit very patiently and watch as they live out their lives. To watch what alerts them when they feel safe. We do the same with the mind. There's a case of mistaken identity which we humans share, which is that we believe we are our thoughts. We believe we are our personality. We believe all kinds of delusions. We believe secretly that something's going to last. Mostly we believe secretly that the I is not going to die. And we believe secretly that it's possible to reach some place in life where things are just fine, where things finally get stable. And so we take a little snippet out of our busy day to do something very strategically powerful. And that is to cultivate mindfulness, heart, mind, fullness. To actually be here with this breath and this breath. With the wandering mind when it wanders. One of the threads of practice is that it reveals love to us. Love which is at the foundation of our being. But we can emulate it. We can remind ourselves, I aspire to love and accept myself exactly as I am in this moment. That's a wonderful possibility, isn't it? Exactly as I am. which means the mind might be very concentrated, and it's nice when that happens. Or it might be pretty wild, and that's usually pretty uncomfortable. But neither of them are wrong. They're just what is. It's also possible to expand the field of our home base. We can be aware of in-breathing and out-breathing at the chest and abdomen. Or we could focus at the nostrils. There's a subtle sensation on the in-breath and the out-breath. Or we could include the life, the sensations in the hands. So there's breathing in and breathing out, and there's all this vibration, or whatever word we want to put on it, in the hands and arms. There's more than that, of course. There's the legs and the feet, the buttocks, the back, the arms and shoulders and neck and face. It's all alive. And no matter what we're using as our home primary object, It's still the same thing when awareness mysteriously notices that the mind is wandering. In addition to cultivating a loving attitude in which there's room for everything, we also acknowledge that there is really quite a lot of suffering in life. There's all kinds of spheres of suffering: birth, sickness, old age, decay, and death. There's having experiences we don't want and not having the ones we do want. There's being with people we don't want and not being with the person or persons we do want. There's pain in the body. So whenever we discover this painfulness, this sufferingness, we have another prayer sort of thing, which is, I aspire, I intend. Whenever I discover myself hurting or suffering in any way, I intend to hold myself sweetly in compassion. If there's a lot of restlessness or agitation, simply noticing that reality is a profound step in the way of freedom. If the mind is full of disliking, colored by wanting, craving, simply knowing that is a great step toward freedom. Sitting patiently with what is. Breathing in and breathing out. Please notice the quality of mind which is present. Is it a mind at great ease, or is it a mind with some toiling happening? Is it a mind characterized by silence? Or perhaps by thoughts, by emotions? It's straightforward to notice the body is sitting, which is a fine aspect of practice, sitting body. A powerful practice to notice what the mind's large characteristics are. Another realm it's worthy of observing is that of mood. What is the mood of this moment? It could be an elated mood or a contracted mood, a depressed mood, a confused mood. And something we can notice is that which knows these moods is actually unaffected by them. This is the refuge in the Buddha. And please now let us bring awareness into the feet and the legs, into the buttocks and thighs, into the back, into the face, and the face has lips and cheeks. It has a jaw. We can even open that jaw a little bit if we want and move it back and forth. It's a strange thing. Mind moves matter. There's the ears and the temples and the crown of the head. And let us allow awareness to open in the sensations of eyes. And let them roll around a little bit in their beautifully protected, smooth hideout. And there's something we can do with eyes, which is to open them. But let's not do that until we're aware of the intention to open them. And then, when that's clear, please, whenever you're ready, let the eyes open to be aware of what happens. A whole different world of experience occurs. There's a playful experience I discovered a long time ago on retreat when one becomes kind of desperate for entertainment. And there's the very remarkable practice of consciously letting your eyes close and watching what happens. Try it. They close, and then we make an intention in the mind, in the heart mind, an intention to open them again, and then seeing happens. But it's not just seeing, it's seeing and knowing of seeing. There's that added mysterious capacity. Now, in a different context, you might try that 100 times. It might get really interesting. And then you might sometimes notice when you blink, it's gone. There's a moment of no seeing. Hi friends on Zoom, how you doing? Paul Levine lets us know he tested negative. Yay! We came back from I just taught a 5-day retreat at Brighton Bush last weekend to Wednesday, and 3 people tested positive when they got home. And interestingly, the day that happened, Brighton Bush went to a no-mask policy. So there really is no way to make sense of this crazy thing that's happening. So, announcements. Kendall Summers is at Cloud Mountain Retreat Center right now, helping with Kamala Masters, Steve Armstrong, and someone else. They're teaching a retreat, few days. However, she has good internet access, and she will be teaching her first and third Sunday of the month gathering on Zoom. That's from 6:30 till 8, I think. We also have the ongoing queer affinity group, colorfully named Be Queer Now, which is a nice. And that's from 7 to 9. And you can get the information for both of these, how to hook up to them, on the old website. We'll have a new website soon that will be much nicer and more functional. Anything else we should be announcing, Mr. Dalton?
Well, there's a long-term save the date. I think it's the 6th of August. The first Saturday, I think is the 6th. But it's the first Saturday. Kendall's going to be doing an all-day retreat here.
Likely 9 to 2.
More like 9 to 4.
Oh, good. A real great. Good. Okay, save the date. I will be here the next 2 Sundays And then I will be gone for either 2 or 3, I think. I forget exactly. I'm teaching with my friend Frank. How many of you know Frank later? A few, yeah. Frank was a student of Ruth Denison, my teacher, for 20-some years, and we never met until she died. And then I discovered that I have a German brother. And so he's come here several times, and he's set up a retreat that we're going to co-teach together in Germany. So I'm going to go spend some time doing that. Mr. Dalton, would you like to do some movement? I think I can set this up to show it on all the different things. Here's the plan. Jim will lead us in some mindful movement, and then I will come back and I'm going to speak, talk about a Dharma talk about freedom. So let me find, here it is. If I find this, and then I do this, okay, and then I do this. This is a test. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I think that's good. Change this to this. Is there sound on Facebook now? Okay. I did nothing new. More volume. You're so demanding. All right. There we go. That should be, ooh, we're getting into clipping. Down there. There you go. Well, there. My mother-in-law, Rita, passed away on Friday morning. She's been in a very nice care facility up in the West Hills since November, when my wife Jennifer and I brought her from a memory care place in Florida. And they're incomparably different. This one is so much better. And it still didn't minimize the fact that Rita actually left or dissolved 18 months ago, really. She fell on Thursday. And then in the hospital, the medical staff said, it looks like she's dying. And there wasn't, no, she may have had a stroke or something and then fallen. Could easily be that. But we sat with her, I'm lose track of the days, but we sat with her pretty late into the night. And then went home, and her breathing had improved a lot. She had that Cheyne-Stokes breathing, and then that went away, and she was breathing sort of normally. There's long apneas in the former breathing. Anyway, we went home, and then the phone rang at 6:30 in the morning that she had passed away. They went in to give they were giving her morphine and something to clear up the heavy phlegm. So we went, and there she was. She was still warm. And then over the next few hours, 2 or 3 hours, she transformed from Rita into what we look like after we're dead. And I've been doing death practices for decades, and I've been around some deaths. And it's always such a blessing to be there and to sit for a while and to see. And you all look a little strange to me. I was at the Blues Festival yesterday, It's actually a religious, spiritual undertaking for my wife Jennifer. That she comes back to life in the spring with the Blues Festival. It's clearer to me than it usually is that there's a bunch of bodies sitting in this room, and they're invigorated by something that's not the body. It's a strange thing, this being alive. We get born, we go through somebody training, we live a life, and then we disappear. It's so odd. I was inspired this morning to speak about freedom. Rita's free of that, whatever happens after death. It's been a long haul for her. About, 15, 20 years ago, she had a brain bleed that changed her personality really a lot. And then she had some incredible, she met this man, Bob Brunges. She'd known him for a long time. And they had I think about a 10-year relationship where they were alive. It was quite lovely to watch. Cared about each other. And then he died a year and a half. But enough of that. There's a very Buddhist thing on freedom I want to say, but I want to also address this kind of more mundane freedom, the freedom that is celebrated in the United States around the 4th of July. I'm always in a strange relationship to the United States because I wasn't born here. I'm a Canadian refugee. That's not really true at all, is it? I'm a Canadian who had the incredible privilege of doing a simple immigration through marriage. But tomorrow night, I don't know whether we'll stay for it. Tomorrow night at the Blues Festival, there will be a giant fireworks display on the river. And last year, we lasted about halfway through, and then we left. But before it, there will be half an hour of very Americana, what do you call it? Patriotic music. And America has been a rather remarkable experiment in individual freedom and in the growing of individual freedom and the freedom of minorities and so on. And we're right now in a period of very scary and dangerous contraction of that, as the same energies that took over Afghanistan have manifested themselves in the Supreme Court. There's this move to control women. And it's far from over, of course. So there's that level of personal freedom, individual freedom, the freedom to marry who you want, the freedom to associate who you want. And there are struggles with that in the world. And there are experiments in self-government and a lot of experiments on autocracy. And they're growing, right? So there's things we might do about that. We might be engaged politically. Hopefully we'll vote. And that's not the freedom that the Buddha talks about, which I want to go to. But before I do that, there's one song that I think is very beautiful, and I want to play it for you. Those of you on Facebook and YouTube will not hear it, because if you do hear it, the recording will be disallowed on Facebook and YouTube. Oh, just before I go, it's We Americans by the Avett Brothers, so you can listen to it on your own. We Americans. And it speaks to the complications of being any nationality, really. That's one thing that's been, it's nationality and nationalism are particularly clear to me. I lived in Switzerland long enough to become very attached to Canton Uri, the state, basically in the middle, the Zentralschweiz, right the middle of Switzerland. In fact, when I went traveling to Asia, I had a Canadian flag on my pack for safety, and also Canton Uri, this bull. But I lived in Australia long enough to fall in love with Australia. And I lived in New Zealand long enough to fall in love with New Zealand. And it's so easy, it makes so much sense that people fall in love with their local identity. And they're all superficial, right? There are these things we call borders. And without the proper papers, you don't get across. We have a big border on the south of this country that if you happen to be born on a womb on the other side, that's where you are. I'm debating whether to share this paranoid thought with you, but I think it has some realism. There's a border on the southern edge of Oregon that's going to have hundreds of thousands of refugees coming north as the water runs out in California. Right. We're into this deep at this point. So there's the political freedom and nationalism and so on. And then I want to speak about the Buddha's idea of freedom after I play this song. Test one. Some of us are strongly drawn to tracking the news, to the path of activism. Deep involvement in the political realm. Some of us are not. What PIMC is dedicated to, I think, is to living as responsibly as we can in our culture, taking part, and potentiating the involvement that we have with a deep exploration of what it is to be a human being and of what drives us as human beings and of what freedom means. And the Buddha is quoted as having said, "The taste of this practice in the beginning is the taste of freedom. The taste of this practice in the middle is the taste of freedom. The taste of this practice at the end is the taste of freedom." If we were to wait until everyone in the world is free, we would never begin. If we were to wait until the inequities in our city were balanced, we'd never begin, right? We wouldn't begin our spiritual practice. So as I understand it, and as I understand, the Buddha was not living in some golden era when there wasn't war and there wasn't famine and there wasn't all the things that go on now. It was all happening around him. But he discovered something that is revolutionary for certainly for individual human beings, and it was that he taught. And so I want to circle around that several times. I want to review the Four Noble Truths very briefly. The first thing the Buddha taught was the Four Noble Truths. In fact, that applique, that pretty piece of fabric back there, is a drawing. On the right-hand side is representative of the first time he taught what he learned to his 5 friends. And the story goes that those 5 friends got it. That merely his telling them about the Four Noble Truths was enough to flip them over the edge into total freedom, total awakening. So he started with their suffering. Birth, sickness, old age, decay, death. It's quite a list. I say it really quickly because I've said it for so long, but if you think of it, birth, sickness. Sickness is painful, isn't it? I had a very mild case, as such things go, of COVID, but the first 2 or 3 days were pretty yucky. And then the fatigue, for that crashing fatigue, was quite unpleasant. Birth, sickness, old age. Old age. Who knew? Decay. Crumbling, the crumbling of the systems. Death. Having experiences you don't want to have. Not having experiences you do want to have. Being with people you don't want to be with, and not being with people you do want to be with. It kind of covers the waterfront, doesn't it? And the cause of the suffering, the second noble truth, or ennobling truth, is that there's some part of us that doesn't want it to be like this. That wants, I want it to be pleasant, please. Or damn it. Or I want it to be, I certainly don't want it to be, well, I want it to be pleasant, and I don't want it to be unpleasant. I don't want it to hurt. And since this moment has these likings and dislikings, I want to be somewhere else. I want to become something different. And then the third ennobling truth, the great promise actually of the Buddha's teachings is the promise of Nirvana, which actually isn't a whiny metalish band from Seattle. My son, who's a marvelous guitarist, was very into guitar and music when Nirvana was out. And his room was under my office at home. And sometimes I would have to call down and just say, I can't stand another one of those. I can't do one more. But Nirvana also isn't another planet that we go to. It's what occurs naturally when the wanting not, and wanting to become, when they stop, then the circumstances of life may remain exactly the same, but the suffering's gone. There's a quality of acceptance. So, freedom. One of the ways we talk about freedom is it's the freedom to do whatever I want. Does Elon Musk have freedom? He can do whatever he wants. Does Vladimir Putin have freedom? He's doing what he wants. I don't think he's very happy or free. So for most of us, something happens in our lives that goes beyond our capacities of coping. And we discover that we're really hurting. And life is quite effective at that, isn't it? Right? The rug gets pulled out in so many different ways. And then if we're lucky, we tune in, we get to walk through those front doors. And reminds me, I didn't speak about Dharma, and I must before I finish, but we get to walk through those front doors curious, one way or another, metaphorically perhaps. And then we sit down, and we realize how remarkably unfree we are. We are completely enslaved by moods, by beliefs, by hopes and fears, by, name the moods, by depression, by anxiety, by anger. We create relationships of various different kinds and discover that we're not free necessarily to be our best selves in them because there's a kind of tyranny of our own moods and our own demands. And we blow things up. So, and this is, my thinking always comes back to this. So I sit myself down and I start paying attention to breathing. And I discover that I am a prisoner of thoughts. I'd like to say I'm free, but there's thoughts, all these thoughts. And there used to be a lot more thoughts. There is hope. I know on my first, for a long time my meditation was preoccupied with emotions, with old trauma, with not feeling good enough, with having to try real hard because having some model. If I just get to this, if I just get enlightened, I'll be free somewhere in the future. But what it comes down to is I'm sitting here. I have the intention of staying with the breath. And then the wandering mind happens. And it happens with no observer. It happens just because it happens. And that wandering mind could be self-hatred. It could be other hatred. It could be some propaganda video. It could be, who knows, it could be some commercial, purchase this, purchase that thing. It could be a favorite song that we've listened to so much that it just won't stop singing itself. And then something wakes up. Right? Mindfulness winks into being. And what a moment before was unconsciously what I thought I am. And then it stopped. Maybe for just a second. But for a moment, I'm not my personality. Let's say, use another example. I'm sitting, being here, present. And then this story comes in. Why, can you believe it that they said that and did that? Or can you just, I can't wait to tell my aunt so-and-so about it. And there's this, it's like a bad movie script. And maybe it's strong enough and the images are strong enough that it sets off my fight-flight response and my blood pressure goes up and my anxiety goes up and and then I realize, well, I'm angry about that. And this whole thing happens. And then awareness awakens and notices that trance. These moments of awakening are freedom. They're freedom from the identification with this separate self story. Now there's a promise in these and any other teaching, I think, that by doing this, I'll have more moments of freedom. Another kind of freedom I talked about this somewhere, maybe here. Several Saturdays ago, I was 6 days into COVID. And I was no longer testing positive, but I felt bad. And I was taking, bless his heart, my doctor prescribed the fancy antiviral medications. I qualified because I'm over 65 and had 2 comorbid conditions, he let me know. But not only did it take out the virus, it interacted with something in me. I think one of my other medications. I stopped 2 other medications when I took these antivirals. But on the Saturday morning, I felt really, I woke up in quite a lovely space. Sat for an hour or so. And then I took the antivirals, and within half an hour, I plunged into the darkest depression I've seen in a long time. It was just... And I sort of saw it coming. But then, one of the things that this mind does in depression is to dredge up all the things that are wrong. And so, my list of things that are wrong with Jennifer and my marriage with Jennifer just lit up. And it was so convincing. I really am married to the wrong person, and and it was so real, and I got very close to picking a fight with her. She was pretty good at deflecting me, but actually what happened was I realized, wait, this is madness. Oh, hang on, I'm getting a low battery sign. Why would that be? Is this not plugged in? It's not me that's low battery. Oh, there we go. So there was enough mindfulness, and mindfulness began speaking out from behind this dark cloud. And I've been depressed. I was depressed for a lot of my life. And so it's so familiar. It's like, oh, this is the real me. But it occurred to me, and I said to Jen, excuse me, I am unfit for human contact. Right? I am a sick puppy right now. And so I went to my little meditation house that I broadcast from on weekday mornings, and I sat for at least an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, just sat in my recliner and watched. And it's so painful to do that. However, it's much less painful than damaging my relationship, which will be painful for days. And then it broke up. It broke up, and I was pretty tired, but it went the way it went the way bad drug trips can go, which is they diminish. And it had a very salutary effect on me, that particular meditation time, because it brought up so much faith that I'm not my moods, right? And I'm not my personality. I'm not who I think I am. And what am I? Well, I'm that which knows. And that which knows is not prisoner. In the middle of sickness, I've done a lot of meditation in sickness. Many of you are new. 2.5 years ago, I had a minor stroke, and then it was revealed that I had a major aneurysm, and so there was a big surgery through my forehead, and a 10-week recovery process. And they put a paper clip on an artery, on the aneurysm, which is a balloon that comes off the side of the artery. And I had weeks of meditation practice then that were really incredible. And then, anyway, when there are symptoms and one can simply stop and turn toward the symptoms and notice the resistance, then the resistance can go away and there can just be the symptoms, and one is free. One is free of the suffering of sickness. Doesn't mean the sickness goes away. It's not a magical, I can cure. Whoops. Jamie is calling me. I'm not going to answer a call. Jamie, can you text me? Oh. I'm listening to Robert replay the meeting. Oh, hang on. I see. I see the problem. Shoot. It's just hard to get every little damn detail. There, that should be better. Thank you, Jamie. Was that the issue? Why didn't you just tap me on the shoulder, for Christ's sake? Sorry, everybody. I had the wrong view on. Well, I'll just say it all again. I'm only saying one thing, aren't I? It's that mindfulness practiced and developed means we're much more free to make choices in our life that are useful to us. There's one other example that is so common, I want to mention it again, though I did already in a way, which is if we practice enough, that our moods and our reactivities begin to become visible to us, our relationships can change remarkably. Because he, she, they say this, and it comes in, and it has its maybe intended response, or who knows what, but, right, I'm annoyed, or I'm hurt, or whatever. And then I fire back. What's the first thing that comes up? And we're off to the races. We're in the Ukraine. We're at war with each other. If, on the other hand, I have developed enough mindfulness, and if I've developed the habit of observing and taking a moment before responding, before reacting, I then have the opportunity to craft a response. And some years ago, I did a bunch of study of Marshall Rosenberg and nonviolent communication, which I highly recommend. And there was a moment in a conversation with my then partner, Nancy Turner, with whom she helped create PIMC. She said something, one of her provocative, aggressive things in my observation of it. And instead of firing back, which I was ready with, I'd learned something in the training, and I said something totally different, which was, ow, what you just said really hurt. That was different. All kinds of freedom, all kinds of possibilities opened up. One other example. In my work, I have the great privilege of being with lots of hurting people. But the hurting I'm thinking of now is being with someone whose partner is on the journey toward death. And that sets off every trip in the book, right? And, or however, to have a meditation practice which is developed enough that we actually know how to calm the thing down. And we actually know how to observe the freaked out parts. Then we go through major life crises much more kindly, much more lovingly, much more, with vastly less suffering, because we're not adding on all the hysteria. I'll tell you this story. I remembered it again. I told it, I think, at Brighton Bush. It's a great true story. A couple of decades ago, maybe 15 years, a woman appeared at PIMC and got pretty involved. She took my classes. And at some point, one of her daughters needed back surgery. And so she had the back surgery, and she got one of those hospital-dwelling, flesh-eating, horrible bacteria. And she came to the brink of death. And there were other children and my student, and they were all utterly hysterical, freaking out. And then she got well. That was good. And then something had provoked in my student, she was about my age, something had provoked in her the impulse to go and study meditation. She went to the Insight Meditation Society in Massachusetts, where she spent almost 2 years. And during that 2 years, she did several 10-day meditation retreats, and she attended dozens and dozens of Dharma talks, and she did an hour of practice in the morning and probably more in the evening for a long time. And then she came home. And she was lovely. She was lovely before she left, but she was really a kind-hearted, generous person. And then, lo and behold, how this could happen, I don't know, but the bacteria burst out on her daughter's back again. How did it survive for all that time in the body? And there she was in the ICU on the brink of death again. However, my student had no hysterical response at all. She went straight into compassion. And she was very clear about it and rational and comforting of her other children. And they turned on her because their interpretation was that she didn't love them anymore. Right? If you take the sign of love is freaking out. Now, one could become cold-hearted and hard-hearted, but that wasn't at all what had happened with her. She'd become really much more like a Buddha. That's another aspect of freedom, that if we will devote the time and energy and commitment and community to develop our hearts and minds, then we can go through the rest of our lives with much more balance and much more kindness. And it's not like one has to meditate for years to have this begin to occur. I mean, one of my I love it when I'm in such a privileged position that people start meditating, and then I get to hear their reports. Especially when I do my itinerant teaching. I did it again this year. I went up to the White Horse in the Yukon, and I get to be with people. And some people then practice, and then the next year I go back, and it's like, oh, wow, they're different. But there's this classic story. This could be, it's the classic. I call my mother every Sunday. I don't like her. But I feel like I should call her. So I call her, and we always have the same fight. It's not a bad fight, but we always end, I feel crappy about it. And then, I don't know what happened. This is like 6 or 8 or 10 weeks into practice. I don't know what happened, but last week I called her, and she said that thing that I always get pissed off at, and I just felt sad about it. I felt compassionate. And then I listened a little more, and I said, wow, that sounds hard, Mom. And it was so weird. We had the conversation. We didn't go down the old rabbit hole. Consternation. How could that happen? Well, there was a little bit more mindfulness. Well, I wanted to open up and have questions and comments, but I realized that I've lost the time. I've lost track of time completely. And it's time to close. Funny, strange. Not so unusual. I do want to speak of dana for a moment, the practice of generosity. There is up here a bowl, which was my bowl when I was a monk for a little while in Burma. There's also a wooden box back there you can put financial offerings into. Generosity is the practice of belonging. This is your place. You own it, actually. You own it as much as anybody else does. It's a non-profit. There's a board of very fine people who manage it according to the state law and so on. So we operate only on donations. There's no membership fees or anything like that. And the thing that you can do that really makes the most difference is to go online and make a monthly contribution. And then we're stable. And beyond that, I would encourage you, find some way every day that you can be generous. Find a way to, and let it be playful. There's all kinds of things you can do. And I think of this as an important gesture I offer. You see this? This is a Cysteine Ultra. It's a non-preservative eye drops. Really helps. I've got dry eye syndrome. Watch what happens in you when I do this. Mine. Very different from, want to try one? They're very addictive. Your eye will feel so good. If you'd like to, it's right here. And in so doing, with that little seemingly insignificant thing, I feel more open and connected. And so there's lots of ways to do this. I don't think we made a community announcement either, did we, Laura, about the can you say the name, Marjorie?
No, Maybelle Clark McDonald Foundation.
What's the first part?
Maybelle.
Maybelle Clark McDonald Foundation. We mostly, this lovely human being over here, Laura, created a request of them for funding to help pay for the ramps and all, and they granted us $25,000, which is very nice. It helps fill in the hole, because we went about $160,000 over budget, which was things like, near the end, the city said, "Oh, you need a sophisticated fire alarm system for $45,000," and which, I feel good about the fire alarm system. It's, who knows, maybe it'll save somebody's life sometime. So anyway, that's the dana pitch. You can go online and first be generous with yourself, practice, and then support your community, and wherever you can, you can enjoy the delight of having enough to share. Well, sorry for that period of blackout, you guys. That was not my intent. I guess that's it. Let us chant our goodbye chant. Bhavatu sabe mangalam. Bhavatu sabe mangalam. which means may all beings receive all blessings. It's a nice chant. And sadhu, meaning may it be thus, or it is thus. So together, and you folks, well, you can unmute if you wish, you'd hear each other. Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam. Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam. Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you very much for coming. Please help us by putting away the chairs and cushions. And see you soon. And keep an eye on the listserv, because I think we're going to go maskless pretty soon here. And reestablish the coffee and tea and gathering. Goodbye. Thanks for coming, folks.
Thanks, Robert.
Yeah. Thanks, Robert.
Thanks, Jim.
Goodbye, Heather and Jamie and
Bye,
Sherry
Sangha.
and Lisa and
Goodbye,
Kristen
Robert.
and Jai. Hi.
Bye there.
And Joan and Allison and Liz.
Give our
Bye-bye.
best to Jennifer. Give our
Prepare
love
for the
to
leap to
Jennifer.
hyperspace. Oh, hang on. Let me just
Bye,
check
everyone.
this. I'll be there in a second.
Bye.
All right, here we go. Preparing for the leap to hyperspace. Whoosh.
Record.